Hello and welcome to the Geek Bomb after show for Nerdist's book club. As you guys know, we have been covering Claudia Gray's Bloodline all month and dissected it, spoken about it, absolutely praised it. And we thought, what better way to round out the month of talking about the book than have the author of Bloodline on this amazing Geek Bomb after show for you. I brought Rachel and Hector back because it is book club and I've got to have my allies with me there. But we've also got Claudia Gray. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us on this after show and letting us talk about this book of yours.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's exciting.
Absolute pleasure. I guess the first question that we've all had is, what is the process of writing a Star Wars book? What are the parameters that you have to deal with? How much information do you get? Do they pitch you the idea or do you pitch them the idea? Tell us everything.
Mud.
I want to know.
There's really not one answer to that. For instance, I knew next to nothing about The Force Awakens when I wrote Lost Stars. They had to tell me about Ben Solo, Kylo Ren for Bloodline, but that was 100% of what I knew. Like, I didn't know when I went to the theater that Rey was the main character. That was how much I didn't know. Whereas for Leia, Princess of Alderaan, they had me like go into a room and read the entire Last Jedi script about a year before it came out, which was awesome and fun. But then I was a little cheated because it was like, I didn't actually need all of this. I kind of like saving some of the surprise. So you get different amounts of information based on how secure things are. And, you know, if I hadn't been going out to California then in a position where I could go and show my ID and be in a room, I wouldn't have gotten to read the script, etc. They tend to pitch ideas. You can pitch ideas, but Lucasfilm Publishing runs on its own calendar and has its own plans, and your pitch is going to have to hit one of their plans. Like after Lost Stars, they're like, hey, what else would you like to write? And one of the first things I said was, I'd like to write Qui-Gon. And they're like, really? And I said, yes, I want to do that. And for years, nothing. But then, of course, the 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace rolls around, and now it's time for a Qui-Gon book. So that, but yes, that one there. But it had to fit in with what else was going on. With both Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and The Force Awakens, and really with Master and Apprentice, they only gave me about a 2 or 3 line blurb and sort of like, come up with, what do you think? And then I put together an outline, and then that goes and they check whether that fits with the rest of canon or works or whatever. Now, Bloodline was different. They actually gave me about 1.5 pages of information. And a lot of that had to do with where the galaxy was in this point of time. And it was all very political at that point. There wasn't anything about the underworld. There really wasn't anything actiony. And literally the first thing I said to my editor after I read it was, Leia's got to blow something up. I didn't say something. No, something has to explode in this. And the napkin bombing was very specifically given to me, to the point where I was on a thing, I think about a week ago, and they were like, one of the questions from readers was, who warned Leia? Who did that? And I said, I have no idea to this day. They haven't told me. I asked, believe me, but somebody knows. Presumably it's going to roll out at some point, but I have no idea. Even that though, I did change a few things in the thing that they gave me. Casterfo was in it, but 1, he actually worked for Leia, and 2, he was a flat out bad guy. He was just terrible.
Wow. And
he had this secret collection of Empire artifacts that he was like, you know, stroking in his spare time, like my precious, you know. And the idea was that he suddenly betrays Leia, and she had no idea, with the release of the information about Darth Vader. And, you know, and I objected to this. First of all, I was like, Leia ran an underground rebellion for years. If she didn't have a really good idea who to trust, she wouldn't even have gotten to A New Hope. I don't buy for a minute that she would be that unobservant. I mean, just the proof is there based on what she's done, both with the rebellion and with the resistance, that she knows where to put her trust. So I didn't buy that. And also, I just didn't think he was a very interesting character, really. He just, like Gollum of the Galactic Senate, sort of. And so I was like, okay, what if he's against her, but he's the member of the opposition who has a point? And what if he actually has those Imperial artifacts out and proud? Because we know from, by that time I didn't have any plot information about The Force Awakens, but you could tell just from the trailers and everything, like, oh, there's clearly a very strong tie between the Empire and the First Order. It's like, okay, clearly there are people who are nostalgic for this. Clearly there are people who still venerate it. So I got to go in that direction. And to their credit, when I offered this up, they were like, okay, yeah, great. So that was good. Did that answer your question at all? I don't know.
I asked a lot of them straight up. And another question for following up on that, like we're introduced to new things like blood burn and different facets of like what goes on in the Star Wars universe. How much of that are you able to sort of make up and instill, which is now canon? Or do they have like a glossary of things that you're able to kind of add because it already exists in the world?
Both. There are a lot of things that you draw from, and it's really great, I have to say, because I've written original science fiction, and when you're doing it, you're so feel like, okay, I'm designing the spaceship, and here's its manner of propulsion, and et cetera, and it's so great to be able to go, hey guys, what kind of ship would they take? And they're like, here are the blueprints, here's the concept art of it. It's really nice to just have that. And of course, you have this really rich universe that you can draw from. But if you need something that isn't there, you can float it. And generally speaking, if it works with the universe, they'll take it. Every once in a while, you bump into something based on another piece of canon that's developing that you don't know about. When I was writing a lot of this, it was like, oh, something may be happening on Resistance, something may be happening in The Mandalorian, et cetera. And you don't know. They're just like, no. Like when I did the outline for Leia, Princess of, for Bloodline. Originally, it was a hollow of Bail Organa that appeared. They're like, you can't do this. I was like, what do you mean I can't do this? And they're like, you can't have it be a hologram. It's too close. And like, close to what? Yeah, I hadn't seen Rogue One yet. Nobody had. So I was like, it'll be an audio recording. And actually, when I went out there to talk about that outline and read the Last Jedi script, it was the employee screening of Rogue One. And so I went to it with that. And the minute that appeared, I was like, oh, okay. That's why I wasn't able to do that. So there's generally a reason for what's going on. You don't always get to know what it is, but you do have some liberty to invent things. I like to draw from existing things where I can, just because I think fans really enjoy those connections. And again, it's a really rich world with amazing world building. The world's greatest artists and creators have been working on this for 40 years. Why would you not pull from that well? It's something that I enjoy doing.
I think, Claudia, my favorite thing about Bloodline is that I feel the love that you have for this character, and also to me for the actress. And I'm a huge Carrie Fisher fan as well. And even though you're talking about how it's such a wonderful world to play in, I have to ask, did you have ideas or wishes as a fan of Leia that you've had since you were a kid and you saw these movies? Because in moments of this, it feels as like you're bringing to the story, you're able to say, this is what I always hoped to see from this character. This is what I always hoped to kind of dive into and we never had a chance to. I'll give you my favorite example. When you, in your story, mention how Alderaan had a lullaby that involved the moon, I was like, Claudia, that is devastating. Your little example, like kids looking up and then, having it be part of the lullaby and then they get vaporized. Like, are those types of things that you have had in your fan wish list for years, or are these things that you are coming up with as soon as you get this job and you're like, oh, this, and this? How much of that are you bringing?
It's more the latter, honestly, because most of my fan life, which was age 7 to whenever I wrote Lost Stars. I mean, I'm still a fan, but it changes at that point. I spent most of that time thinking about immediately before, during, and right after the rebellion, and that was a time frame. Like I have 97 billion things in my head for exactly what happens between the escape from Jabba's palace and the big briefing with Mon Mothma. I could write a whole book right then. It would be so fun. But
we want it.
But still, I did get a whole lot of experience just through being a fangirl, going like, what would Princess Leia do? What would she think? How might she react? And so it was great because when they came to me for Bloodline, you know, I was going to be writing somebody that I had loved when I was a little girl, who was really only a few years older than me then. And now I was going to be writing her a few years older than I am now. Wow. And, you know, Star Wars has never been a wash in the perspectives of women over 40. Like that has just not been a viewpoint that we've gotten a ton of. And it was really interesting to take that on. Like, okay, what if I come back and look at it as this person that's like, yes, we won the war, and then the galaxy was still complicated, and I wound up with my true love, and we still drive each other crazy a lot of the time. That's the reality of victory. There isn't anything as absolute victory. And so it was interesting to do that and sort of kind of complicate and shadow that while still keeping her the very heroic and hopeful and determined character that we love.
I love that. I actually made that point on the first time of the book where I was like, something feels different about this book. And I go, have you actually in any fantasy or sci-fi out there ever had the point of view from a woman over 40? And we're like, nope. And I love that. We are taking questions from the audience over on the Discord. So if you've signed up to patreon.com/geekbomb, you can get your questions in, and they are coming in thick and fast. So I thought I would just come up with a couple of really quick ones to get started so we can get to some more later. But from Lee, lost the numbers, question, first time, long time, was the ride at Disneyland named Rise of the Resistance because of this book, Bloodline?
I don't think so. I wish. That would be so great. I got to go on that in February. And now the idea that I was at Disneyland in February surrounded by thousands of people seems completely surreal, like something from another life. It's so great. I love it so much. So great. Sorry, fangirl moment over. I don't think that's why. I wish would be why, and then I would wear that with pride. My one big from Galaxy's Edge is if you go in the cantina, you can have a glass of Tonneray, the wine that
Cool. Thank you as well as a big wine drinker for making that important as well. I was like, I
saw that on the menu and like flipped out. It was honestly kind of embarrassing, and I'm glad it was loud and dark in there. There are no records of it.
We've got one from Aaron and said, what inspirations, historical or otherwise, did you draw from in creating characters like Ransom Casterfo and Lady Carice? Also, I want to get the pronunciation because in the audiobook she says Casterfo, but you said Casterfo.
It is Casterfo. Lucasfilm came to me, and actually in the very, very earliest, like even before I saw it, the very earliest incarnation of the character came from George Lucas. And it had always been Casterfo, but unfortunately nobody told that to the audiobook team who had to guess, which is why now when I hand in a book, I always hand in an audio pronunciation guide for the team. Wow. So that it's all there. And like, sometimes you have to think like, how do I sound that out again? I'm sure they're hilarious to read actually, but inspiration to the characters. I mean, you sort of heard where Ransom came from.
Yes.
The idea that he would be somebody who didn't have the same political ideas as Leia, but was still a person with some integrity and with a perspective that she might be lacking.
And you always from Hiddleston as that, right?
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah. That was it from day one. And also, why has he not been in Star Wars yet? And also, why is he being allowed to age out of Mr. Darcy without anybody filming that Pride and Prejudice? I'm angry and I want things to change. That's what I'm saying.
Make that happen. Well, he's expressing language.
Yes. Yeah, so that was the idea for him immediately. And then, there's always a lot of royalty stuff in Star Wars, even if you kind of don't want there to be. There's always going to be some lord or something showing up, which fits in with the fact that really it is more fantasy than science fiction. And kind of the royalty element is always a part of that, or usually a part of that. And I didn't think Leia ever took that very seriously, except as a responsibility. The idea that she was high and mighty really wasn't part of it. She felt a sense of responsibility, and that was all she took from it. And I thought it would be interesting to have somebody who really does take it seriously, even though the rest of the galaxy is sort of like, really? And that motivates her, mostly to a lot of skullduggery, but I also like the fact that at first she doesn't tell, because it would be betraying the royal oath. And that actually does hold her back for a while. She's that serious about it. So that was sort of where that came from, the idea of having a royal person or a regal person who was much more into that than Leia ever was.
Great.
And I like that her downfall was the thing that she was holding on to the most, but she's losing, which is like sort of like the flip side of what happened with Castafo, which was the whole the only person that could have saved him was the one person that he betrayed. All of those is coming together. Fantastic. Rich, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Leia and Han's relationship, because we get them at the end of Return of the Jedi, and then we find out in The Force Awakens that they've split up. But I also, something that I really enjoyed about this was, we get bits and pieces of Han, but it's really Leia's story, and it's her story on her own in the Senate, both because that's her job and also a little self-imposed. She feels this responsibility. She doesn't want to let people necessarily in on her secrets and things like that.
Yeah.
How did you envision sort of that relationship, and how did that evolve as you were writing it? How much to have him in there and all of that?
Well, originally when they came to me, the 1.5-page thing, they said, it's only Leia's book. There's no Han, there's no Luke. Ben is elsewhere. None of it. And they wanted that because they wanted the book to be very firmly about her. And I loved a lot of the Legends books. I own many of them. I'm actually looking up at some of them on my bookshelf right now. But Leia often did kind of get the boring stuff in the background. She got, like, how many arguments did she have with that Bothan dude? How many? I don't even know. It was a lot. And they didn't want that. They wanted something focused on her. I said, okay. But they said, at this point, she and Han are still together. He's very involved in his own life, and he has a shipping company, but they are still together. And I ran into the fact, because one of the critical elements was that the galaxy would find out that Darth Vader was her father in this. And I said, okay, if that happens and Han is physically able to do it, he comes to her then.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He would show up for that. And there's no way for that not to happen. And they were very resistant because they were afraid that I was then going to turn it into the Han Solo Adventures book. And I said, not going to happen. I promise you. Let me have him for this. And they did that. And I feel like he's in that book without it taking anything away from it being Leia's book. And, I've loved that relationship since I was 10, and being able to write it and show that as different as they were, they did make something work for that long. And I don't think the fact that a real tragedy happened and tore them apart, I don't think that invalidates everything that went before. I just don't believe that. And I don't know whether this is true or not. For all I know, there's more canon that's going to explain this differently. But I also sort of wanted to introduce the idea that, Leia and Han do lead somewhat separate lives a lot of the time. Neither of them has really had to compromise a lot. Yeah. And my idea was that maybe some element of that, like some of the skills they would have had if they had to compromise and be together nonstop, those might have been things that might have carried them through the tragedy with Ben, but they didn't have that. That was my thought. I don't know whether there may be a book coming out tomorrow that invalidates all of that.
It's canon. We're officially calling it. No, I totally agree. And I think, you know, if there was a complete lack of Han, that's fine. But it does feel character-wise like they'd at least, you know, force Skype and things like that. But also that it does feel uniquely like her story. And like Maud said, and like you said, we don't get this perspective a lot. But also we don't, in a novel, you do get this internal monologue and more character moments than you would in a film anyway, let alone, you know, what happened with Leia in the time of the film, you know, the original films. But what are some of the, outside of, you know, her hope and courage, things that we know from the originals, what were some of the character elements that you felt were intrinsically Leia that you wanted to bring to her as, you know, this version of her later in her life?
I mean, I'm far from the first fan to say it, but I do think there's a lot of truth in the theory out there that really Luke is a lot more like Padme, and it's Leia that has a little bit more in common with Anakin. She's the one with the temper. You know, she does. And while she's capable of playing the long game, she can get kind of impatient and kind of stubborn. She can do that. It's not to the extremes it was with Anakin, and thank goodness for the galaxy, but that is there. And the idea that, that's mellowed some with time and with experience, but, you know, she's still got a fuse. You know, she goes in there and gives Castropho some hell after the big reveal because she would. You know, she wouldn't be completely dignified and over it as she is later. Like, right? No.
Also, Leia has something that Luke canon has not yet, and that is love, something that's worth sacrificing yourself for. And we see time and time again Leia being like, I'm a small part in the big picture. And if I sacrifice myself for the better of, you know, the galaxy, so be it. And I feel like Anakin's turn to the dark side was that he finally found love and he almost sacrificed himself to save the one in a way, or to be with the one that he loved. Luke's story, Mara Jade is now, you know, off in Canosphere and doesn't exist anymore. So that's like another parallel. And I really liked that, the exploration of that relationship, because the big thing about Bloodline is that you know what it looks like in 6 years' time, and that is fully fleshed out, and it's trying to fill in the gaps in between that, and that is obviously your job. And I love that we explore deep into their relationship and how independent, severely independent they are. His support, sometimes lack of, all of that kind of stuff was great. What's some of the feedback that you've gotten from fans? Because I know that is a very dangerous territory when we talk Star Wars, the vocalization and demands of how you treat their characters. But what is some of the feedback that you've gotten from Bloodline, whether it's the extremes, I appreciate this so much and you've absolutely made this and cemented my love for it, to the ridiculous feedback of, you know, someone not enjoying it because it's wrong?
You know, most have been really fortunate with Bloodline. Responses have generally been very good. The thing that sort of got on my nerves was a lot of people seem to believe that I meant it as a political allegory for the election of 2016, which had not happened yet when I wrote it. I was like, guys, if I was going to go lathe of heaven on something, it wasn't going to be that. It would be not. You know, and I went to some length really in the book to go like, each of those parties has a left and right wing. You know, they're not based in our politics, because while you want to have resonances that make sense to us from our own history and our own situations, fundamentally, this is a different place. It has a different history. It involves a lot of different worlds and species and cultures in a, you know, in a diversity we can't even begin to wrap our heads around. It shouldn't map exactly. If it maps exactly, something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and I really tried to avoid that. So it was annoying to me when some people were like, oh, you know, definitely, you know, Leia's Hillary Clinton. And I was like,
Not her holograms.
It's been frustrating as a fan of pop culture. the past 4 years and earlier than that even, to anytime there's any pop culture thing about like fascism is bad, to have people go, hey, that's too political for what's happening. I'm like, hey, this is not at all connected. That's not cool, man. That's not what's happening in this fictional story. It's not the fictional stories issue where real world stuff can get so crazy that people can easily make those connections. I'm like, that's a problem. We should not be able to relate this much to Star Wars, but we do. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, and it does show that there is, you know, a universal, or not universal, but drawing from history and experiences and using that to create something new. Like those things should resonate without it, you know, it feeling like this character is this person and this is the exact thing. But, you know, stories resonate, characters resonate because we can find ourselves in something no matter what it is. You know, there's always that like, there's too many girls in Star Wars and all that. And and it's like, well, I watched a bunch of movies that were just full of boys my whole childhood. That was like almost everything. And I could see myself in them and identified with them. Like it's not that hard to do, you know?
No. Shouldn't be.
That kind of leans into a couple of questions that we've got, one from Nathan and the other one from Baxter Hope. Nathan's question is, centralism versus regionalism is a story as old as civilization. How much ancient politics versus modern politics were your inspiration, if any? And following up, Baxter Hope says, how much did the American Revolution impact the writing of the book? Because it seems very reminiscent of the Federalist Papers.
Honestly, there probably is a little bit of American Revolution stuff in that, but it's mostly because right when I was in the heart of writing it, I took a night off, and I was correct to do this, to go see Hamilton. And it was like right at the beginning of its run. And of course it blew me away. And so probably there's a lot of Hamilton there that I never meant to be in there, but it's probably in there because once that gets into your brain, it's not coming out. I didn't really draw from anything too specifically, like this centrist versus populist movement. Again, for the reasons that I said, that's going to feel really different when you're talking about different planets, or you're talking about different species that have different needs. You know, I don't know if it makes sense to have the exact same regulations on, say, Geonosis, you know, insects with a hive mind, as it does, you know, for like, say, the Mon Calamari versus any human world. Like, there's going to be differences in there. Yeah. You know, so I can't really say there's anything specific except, you know, if you know history and you're paying attention to public events, you know that, yeah, these arguments they're universal and they tilt in different political directions based on the era and the place.
I've got another question here from the Tamaranian, which I really like. Did the Alderaan keepsake chest lore already exist in canon, or did you come up with that?
I came up with that, and then I went back and wrote Leia, Princess of Alderaan. I'm like, well, she got to put something in that box. And I was like, what's in the box? And I went back and looked, like, hair, it's brown. It doesn't have to be her hair. So, and went and had her do that in the second book. I might have put yet more interesting things in there if I had known. But no, that was my idea, that she would have a few things left from all of that devastation. I wanted her to have something. And also Bale's message had to get to her somehow.
It's awesome.
I heard that was so brilliant. Yeah.
Heard Jimmy Smith's in my head. Love that. That message from Bale. Fantastic. Beautifully written. You have so far in the Star Wars universe written in that sort of like classically nerd defined 3 different eras: the prequel era, the original trilogy, the sequel era. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a preference? Do you have something that as a writer that you are really attached to, or do you look at all and go, hey, I want to write Qui-Gon, I want to write Leia, I want to write older Leia?
You know, all of them, this is going to sound like such a washout answer, but it's true. All of them have certain things that are super appealing, and all of them have certain drawbacks. Like, I would love to write, say, like a Rey novel, but at any time during the writing of the first trilogy, you know, different movies were saying different things and doing different things, and that could have been very confining in a way.
Right.
And you don't want to go there with that. The prequels, that was a lot of fun because there wasn't much that was very defined, but then it was almost not defined enough. Like part of the fun is bouncing off all the stuff that's there, and we just don't have a ton right before the Phantom Menace. So, I had to really go and touch base with, with Lucasfilm Publishing a few times to be like, would this be happening? Would this be happening? Is this too early for X? In a way that I don't think I would have had to do with either of the later time periods. And the original trilogy, it's the first one. It's the one that really just grabbed your heart and won't let go. And it's also been written in a lot. So you have to find your little piece. Anyway, I don't tend to tie myself down to any one time period in future if I get a choice.
That actually kind of answers Becky P's question, which was how often do you have to consult Lucasfilm Story Group while writing? And it sounds like it depends per property. A question that I have, though, sorry, if you have
while writing, actually not much at all, unless I have a question. When I do the outline, they look at it and they let me know. It really is my book. I have a lot more creative freedom than I ever thought I would have in terms of that. But they may say things like, oh, you know what, you should use this thing that we've been building up from over here. This would be a good thing to use. Or, oh, don't go there. Something else is going to go there. Try, going in that direction maybe. And then when the book is in, it gets looked at again. But again, it's mostly for things. And also I love being able to go like, I don't know exactly how far that blaster's range is. And I could be like, range TK. And, and then somebody will come in and answer that. And I'm just like, yes.
That's nice. There's long range weapons and short range weapons. I play the Star Wars Assault tabletop game, so I know all that. We've got one here because we're obviously talking about a lot of Bloodline at the moment because that's the book that we've covered, but you have written Lost Stars and High Republic. There's 2 High Republic questions in here which I'd like to go over really quickly. Black Belt 23 Nick says, what can you tell us about the High Republic and the book you are writing for it? And then Wes says NDA's withholding. What can you tell us about the High Republic stories? What themes and social issues do you hope to tackle through the lens of the new Star Wars stories?
Okay, leaving aside all the stuff I can't mention from the NDAs, I can tell you that something called the High Republic exists. And that my book is called Into the Dark, which I'm able to tell you because it has been publicly announced. And
October 13th is the release day for that one.
Oh, that's so soon.
Yes.
February.
Oh, is it February? I checked just before on the internet. October 13th. Pushed back. Is it
what day?
Back?
October
13th.
I'm almost certain it's not October anymore just because of COVID stuff. Maybe this shouldn't have been broadcast. But at the same time, though, I think people are aware that,
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the point, you literally couldn't do physical production of some stuff at a point when it would have had to happen. But
anyway,
now,
well, obviously, guys, if you want to know the date,
come in, out of the ceiling,
check it out.
Yeah.
The internet for release dates for all of those. What do I? It changes all the time. Sorry about that one. But can you tell us anything else about that? And if you can't, I guess a follow-up question that someone else has asked is, do you prefer to delve into characters that don't yet exist and you can completely flesh them out, or do you prefer writing known characters and expanding on what you already know? But New Republic, if you've got it.
I've had a lot of fun with my original characters, I have to say, but that's it. I like bouncing the known off the unknown. I mean, that's the fun of it for me. Lost Stars is almost all original characters, but half the fun of that is seeing where they intersect with the characters and the events that we are familiar with. So I really enjoyed creating Rael Averross for Master and Apprentice, but that character wouldn't be as interesting if he's not bouncing off Qui-Gon, etc. So I really like doing the new ones, but I like having something known as well. I feel like it's the combination of the two that makes the writing a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was Aaron's question that we answered just then as I found it. We haven't spoken about Lost Stars at all. You guys didn't cover it, but we did for Geek Bomb. I love Lost Stars. And I love it because you were able to take something that I've always been interested in learning more about in Star Wars. Two things after watching the movies. I was like, there are a lot of people running the Death Star. Are they okay with witnessing the destruction of an innocent planet? And the other one was Leia just took care of a mob boss lord. There's got to be some repercussions from that as well, which we saw in Bloodline, and that was amazing. But Lost Stars really explores the moral implications of working for a very totalitarian kind of like government where you just have to turn a blind eye and obey orders. What was it about sort of Lost Stars that, because this was your first Star Wars book, why this one? Why Lost Stars?
They came to me, just got this email out of the clear blue sky. Like, would you be interested in writing Star Wars? And at the time, I thought they're just going to give me an outline and tell me what to write. And they did not do that. And instead they said, and this is much more like the prompt I usually get. They said, we want 2 childhood friends, a boy and a girl, who grow up during this war and they retain this bond, even though the angry, stormy guy winds up in the Empire and the idealistic girl joins the rebellion. And I came back immediately and was like, no. It's going to be much more interesting if the idealistic girl is in the Empire and the angry guy's in the rebellion. And to their credit, again, they were like, sure, go for it. And of course, everything had to flow out of that. Like, what does a good person think? Like, why do you go into this? And I wanted to make it clear there would be a lot of reasons that you might go into that. I mean, as far as Ciena knows, that's the government. That's the state. That's what she's always grown up being told to respect and revere. And you keep telling yourself, and I think, while hopefully few of us have been in positions quite this extreme, but once you justify one thing, it becomes a lot easier to justify the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And for Ciena, it doesn't really end until she sees that second Death Star. And it's not like she abandons the Empire at that moment, but that's the moment when she really can't fool herself anymore. She's like, wait, no. So does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
And I actually got Castafo and Windrider kind of vibes from each other, where it was that sort of like upper class-ish, sort of like pompous attitude, but you see how different they are as well at the same time.
Yeah, it may be my love for British actors playing that in. Honestly, Nash Windrider I saw as a younger version of Tom Misen from Sleepy Hollow.
Oh.
The first season is why he has the long hair.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Wasn't it amazing how they had that one great season and then there weren't any more of the show ever?
Yeah.
Crazy how that happened.
They were like, here's what people like about this show. Let's get rid of that.
I've also everyone is saying February 2021, so that was absolutely my bad. I had an old date.
Oh God, I'm just so relieved I didn't like blow something out. Oh my God. I thought it was February, but again, I'm not the person that makes these calls.
Goodreads is saying Feb 21.
Would love to ask a question about Qui-Gon. I have yet to dive into Master and Apprentice, but you mentioned how when you were asked, what would you like to read? You said, what would you like to write? I'd love to write for Qui-Gon Jinn. Why Qui-Gon Jinn? Even before you started that story, why did you have a love for that character?
I really connected to that character in The Phantom Menace. And, honestly, there wasn't tons and tons to connect to in The Phantom Menace. But one thing I've said a lot, and please, I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but there's being a great actor, and then there's being able to say George Lucas dialogue convincingly. And those two things don't necessarily overlap. Like, right. I think of Natalie Portman as an actor with a much wider range than Billy D. Williams. But she is fighting to try to get through Padme, and she can't. Whereas every word out of Lando's mouth, you completely believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
The great moments were when you got both. Like Alec Guinness. I don't even think any of us would be here right now if Alec Guinness hadn't been cast as Obi-Wan. I don't think we would. I really don't. He's so magnificent in that. And I really felt like with Liam Neeson, with Qui-Gon, we got that again. We got somebody who was giving a really layered and heartfelt performance that really kind of transcended some of the material that he had. And, you believed it. Like, I'm listening to him talk about midichlorians, like, okay, I would not have been listening to a lot of actors tell me that,
Yeah.
And to me, he really touched on, I really felt like with him, in a way that I didn't feel from any of the other prequel Jedi, including Yoda, at least at that stage in his life, the connection to the mystic. That the mysticism of the Force and the spirituality of that was something that seemed to me that Qui-Gon was still very much in touch with, in a way that the Jedi otherwise didn't touch on a lot in that era. And that just made me love him more, because to me, that's a very important part of it.
I think Disney Plus put out a really great Mandalorian special where, there was a round table with Taika Waititi,
Dave Filoni.
Dave Filoni's conversation. Did you watch this? It went viral, like obviously on my feeds because I have a lot of Star Wars things. But this great breakdown of the difference between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I didn't see that.
And why it was probably that Anakin actually turned to the dark side. And if Qui-Gon Jinn didn't die, he probably wouldn't have. And that was the fundamental differences in their personality. And you're touching on the spirituality that Qui-Gon Jinn has. And so
and also, though, I got to defend Obi-Wan a little bit here. You're not supposed to take a Padawan until you're a master.
That's
Obi-Wan,
it.
Like, and it was the first day he's a knight. They're like, take a Padawan. There you go. Oh, are you in grief for your master? You shouldn't be. He's with the light now. Don't have any feelings about it. Now you have responsibility for another human being 24/7.
And he's kind of living his trauma through Anakin, because that's kind of been like the band.
Yeah, so I think he didn't get a chance to get a little bit older and have more experience being an independent Jedi Knight in the way that would very much normally have been the case. And I think, Anakin obviously was an extreme outlier within the Order. The Order overall did not get really flexible with him. They were just like, nope, just do it like you would do it otherwise. And I don't think that worked for Anakin or for Obi-Wan. I do think Obi-Wan made some mistakes, but I also feel like, and as much as I love him, I have to say, Qui-Gon put him in that position.
Yeah.
He didn't do that.
Qui-Gon should have been like, Obi-Wan, find somebody who's qualified to raise the boy.
Tell Yoda, I said this is the last thing he's going to do for me. Yoda. He's going to train that boy. Have a good life. I'm out. Yeah.
But the thing that Qui-Gon Jinn had was, like, straight away he knew to take the boy away from these dire situations. He knew that having a parental figure for Anakin was the most important thing. He taught him in that brief moment that feelings were more important than thinking.
Yes,
and that sort of nurturing, that was really what Anakin needed. And then when Qui-Gon died and Obi-Wan took over, he's very analytical. He's very logical. He actually takes the emotion out of it and only applies thinking. And he actually was a begrudging leader in that thing. Like, he was thrust upon this whole master apprenticeship, Padawan. In that way, where he's like, he didn't actually want to connect with his subject, and there wasn't a paternal figure there. And because of that disconnect, and that Anakin was taken away from his family, his mum was killed by Tusken Raiders, like, he just needed someone to want him. And because of that,
and
right?
And the way and the thing is, if you think about it, all the Jedi are raised in the creche. They're raised in a group, so you don't grow up understanding the need for a parental figure that pretty much anybody else is going to have. And emotionally, those needs are satisfied in a different way. And because Qui-Gon was older and had other life experiences and had more time to connect, he was able to understand this in a way that the less experienced and younger Obi-Wan had not yet gotten to do, because the Jedi, like, you would have to learn that if you grew up in such a different way. And I just don't think he had gotten there yet. And, it's a tragedy all around. I wrote that story for the first From a Certain Point of View thing,
Right.
also called Master and Apprentice, which is Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And basically everything I've just said in the last few things they're saying through dialogue, well, I think this, I think that, you know. And Qui-Gon's a Force ghost, so spoiler.
That's true. We've got a couple more
read that.
A couple more questions as well. We wrap things up, but Chris was talking, asked the question, something about we were talking before we went live, and that was, do you think the audiobook performance, what do you think about, the audiobook performance and the sound effects? And we were both agreeing that the sound effects in the audiobooks just completely enhance the experience. But I don't know if you want to kind of touch on what you were saying, but I found it very interesting.
I listened to the first bit because they are so next level, and I do think the readers are wonderful, and I'm never able to listen to them all the way through because then I just want to edit myself. Oh, that line would be so much better if I had just said whatever. And this is as not enjoyable as it is possible to be, and really not fair to the voice performers who are wonderful, every single one of them.
Did an amazing job.
Yeah, but I love the way that they do them. It's just my relation to it is just different.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy Sprinkles the Dragon Cat says, what Star Wars character do you see being the closest to you, Claudia?
I mean, quarantine has taught me a lot about myself. I mean, at this point, I'm Baby Yoda because it's naps and snacks and naps and snacks, and then somebody gets me mad and I throw fire, and then naps and snacks. That I relate to that really strongly this time. Actually, it's probably for the best I don't have that power, but that's what I'm connecting with. In terms of my actual personality, I don't know. I'd really have to think about it, but right now I'm emotionally connecting to Baby Yoda. I know I'm supposed to call him a child, but come on, it's Baby Yoda to the other one.
Thank you.
Listen,
I feel like that has basically touched upon everyone's Discord chat. So Hector and Rach, have you got anything?
Only chatting with Claudia here for just a little bit, I feel like, 100% Leia. It's absolutely is that the character. We were talking about how Leia takes no guff, like Leia's a hero. I'm like, yeah. That's absolutely.
Yep. I've taken guff in my day, but
but clearly not to. No, I just I probably have a million more questions, but I just we had such a great time reading this book, and especially between different shows and movies, your mileage may differ on your reactions, and I know we're all extremely online fans of Star Wars, so we get some, as I hope you do not, get some really fun messages that for me had kind of made me not want to be or talk about Star Wars as much and be as excited, which is such a bummer. And the moment we started reading this book, especially I also did the audiobook with the music cues and the sounds. Hector, I mean, come on. But I know you have, I wish I had a physical copy too. I will get one. But it really brought me back into that world and made me just want to watch everything again, want to read everything again. So just thank you. I really appreciate it, and you're great.
I'm really glad that you enjoyed it and were able to get into a really pure place of enjoying things. I'm not online a lot, not because of that, but because it turned into this thing where anytime I said anything about Star Wars, wouldn't it be cool if Rey and Leia had an adventure together? And then literally there'd be 5 websites the next day that would say Lucasfilm source confirmed Rey Leia in the works. And it was just wait, no, and it was just becoming really obvious that I was being taken as a very authoritative source on some stuff. And also just part of a general, I swear I'm not going to be one of those really annoying people who's I gave up social media and I'm so deep now. But I did want to unplug a lot and draw back a lot. And I have to say, I've been a lot happier for it. And I think the number one thing that I love is now when I see a movie or I see a TV show or I read a book, I have my reaction to it, not my reaction to someone else's reaction to someone else's reaction to someone else's reaction. It just turns into nesting dolls at a certain point. And it's been very, very freeing to just let go of that. I'm still on Instagram, but that's mostly because I look at pictures of interior decor and post pictures of my dog.
Great.
Yeah.
We will try to find you so we can see said dog. But yeah, no.
I'm warning you now. Get those eclipse glasses on. She's really cute.
Oh, man. I follow mostly animals on Instagram. Yeah, I think, outside of work responsibility, I have, as, Nerdist doesn't do that. We would never do that. But as people who, are fans and our profession is about things that we are passionate and fans of, it is a weird line to sometimes you just get burnt out on the discourse. And so I've really, one thing about book club and also just, the people I try to surround myself with on the internet, and I think everyone else tries to do that, is like, hey, that's just your opinion, man. Like you can like a thing, I could not like it. Doesn't impact my life in any way. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like, oh, should I be more in tune with it? Because I literally don't hear about things until they've been out for like months or whatever, certain kinds of arguments or weird conspiracy theories. Like some of them are hilarious, and like the more authoritative, the less they have to do with anything. But then I remember back, I grew up in a really small town and went to a really small school, and I was kind of the nerd. I didn't have a whole lot of people. It's like, I was kind of a fan in isolation of Star Wars for decades before any of this other stuff rolled around. If this is working for me, I should get back to where I was. I mean, my boyfriend loves Star Wars and we talk about stuff, but other than that, I'm just kind of back to grooving on it in my own way, and I love that.
That sounds so lovely.
Love it too.
Yeah. I wish that was my reality. You have written so many books spanning nearly decades, but definitely the first book I read of yours was back in 2009, I believe.
Oh yeah. I think the first one came out in 2008.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. I didn't actually make the connection because they are very different. And I guess I have to ask, do you miss writing about vampires?
Sometimes, yeah. And the things are coming back, they always do. I always say vampires are the little black dress of the supernatural. There's always a place. There's always a place for a vampire. They're always going to roll around again forever and ever. But I've gotten to write a lot of things. I've had werewolves. I've had witches. I've had dimensional travelers. I've had space opera that isn't Star Wars. I just sold my first sort of original book for adults this summer, which is actually a Jane Austen, Agatha Christie mashup.
What up? What?
Yeah. I'm so excited. I can't even tell you. Austen characters in a country house. Murder happens.
Oh my God.
What went down? Yeah.
Rachel will not be okay. But we're gonna have to get a murder board 2.0.
Yeah,
murder
board.
We get the string and the chalk, and we do the whole thing.
I don't have a release date for that yet. I would assume it's going to be very late 2021 or early 2022. But obviously, I will let people know,
please,
when the time comes. But yeah, I like being able to write a lot of different things. I like having the diversity of stuff, which again, like with Star Wars, I don't want to write in any one time period. I don't want to stick to all known or all original characters. I like being able to do different kinds of stuff.
Do you have a soft spot in your heart for one of your books? Do you have a favorite of your children?
I really like 1,000 Pieces of You, which was the first book about the dimension hopping. That was the one book that came to me. Like, usually ideas take a while to sort of meet each other and get together in your brain and form a thing. Whereas that one, I think I went from first vague concept to I am on fire and I know I have at least 2 books within about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it was awesome. I mean, it was like, I mean, let's test the depth of the geekery here. You know what Ponfar is?
I do.
Ponfar, yes, from Trek. That's when Spock, every 7 years, he got to swim upstream to Vulcan. All Vulcans have to do it. But Yeah, I was in book far.
Wow.
Oh, I have to do this book. I can only do this book.
To further explain to my non-Trekkies, Spock loses it because he has to have sex. That's what Claudia described.
Completely. He has no cool left. He punches metal things that, because he's super strong, dent in like the cardboard that they actually are. That kind of thing.
Sold me on Star Trek more than any other.
Yeah.
Not that I needed to be sold, but
yeah. And Lost Stars, really, because that was the first one, and it was not something I'd ever thought I would get to do, and it was revisiting the original trilogy, which I already knew very well, and I didn't have to really, like, the research I had to do was things like, what shape are the windows on a Star Destroyer? Like, that's just not the kind of thing I've been thinking about. It's like, there's a lot of trapezoids at work there. I don't think it's solely trapezoidal, but there's a lot of that. So, or like, what is the layout of the data pits? Because you're never really looking at the data pits. You're looking at the people standing above it. But if Cyanus down in one, I need to pay a little more attention to that kind of thing. And I don't know why I didn't understand this, but for some reason, even though I was one of them, I did not understand how many people read Star Wars books. I didn't get it. So I really I didn't think at all about how it would be received, at all. That was completely a thing. It was just like, hey, I get to do this story adventure. Yay. And so it was a very, very pure experience, and I really had a lot of fun with it.
So I was doing some Star Wars podcasts, in that stratosphere. And when canon first came out, it was like, right, we have to stay on top of it. We have to know everything. And for me, it was like when Lost Stars came out, and I'm like, oh my God, you're writing a story for me. Not a fan of Star Wars, but someone that just like cares and is interested and, loves reading. And so that for me, I first listened to it back in 2017, 16 or 17, and then made Geek Bomb do it for a book club. And so I made everyone else read it last year. And it was just, I'm projecting. I'm making sure that, people are liking what I like, but they're all in this chat and they're all watching live now. So, so I'm very glad to hear that. And Kate, who has just written in Miss Necromancer, said, not a question, but this book, Bloodline, has brought me back and being interested in Star Wars. Because as Rachel was mentioning, it's kind of been a little convoluted to be a fan of Star Wars in the last sort of 5-6 years. And, it's easier to not discuss it or be interested in it than it is to be. And so, this book is kind of like making people fans of the franchise again. So
which is great. And also, I kind of feel like now that we're going to be having a greater diversity of stuff that's out there with The Mandalorian and other TV projects, I kind of feel like people are going to be more able to sort of find their vein. It's not like there's going to be one movie every 2 years that everybody
has to
go into a frenzy to analyze and counter-analyze and etc. I think there are going to be people that are really drawn to The Mandalorian or the Cassian Andor show or this more than that. And I think that's going to be really freeing for a lot of people, that they're going to be able to kind of find their vein.
Yeah, different mediums as well.
For some of us, it will be all the veins. But
exactly. Even when I'm not a fan of Star Wars, I still love it. Like I still watch all the prequels like at least once a year. Like I have to. Just love the world.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just saying, sorry if I didn't get to the question in the Discord, but I feel like we covered a lot of what was said in our conversations tonight, which we'll be wrapping up because we have gone a little bit over. So, Claudia, thank you so much for joining us. Is there any lasting thoughts? Because I did cut you off. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
It wasn't remotely relevant at all. So, no, I think we're fine. I think we're fine. If you're really interested in pictures of my dog and sometimes baked goods that turned out okay, Instagram and Tumblr are really the only social media things where I'm around a lot. And even that, is a very loose definition of a lot. I do still have Twitter and Facebook and stuff, but those are kept up by my wonderful assistant. So like when we're able to have events again, events and things like that will get announced on those platforms.
Cool.
And if you do want more books from Claudia Gray in the Star Wars universe, we've just read Bloodline, but if you want to read Lost Stars, I cannot recommend it enough. There is also Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which I guess expands on that even further, and Qui-Gon Jinn, Master and Apprentice. And then February 2021, at this moment, we can get High Republic Into the Dark, which I am very excited about. Did you play Knights of the Old Republic at all, Claudia? Do you?
Oh my God, I love Knights of the Old Republic so much. And I have specifically said to them, if there is ever a novel about the backstory of Mission and Zalbar and how they teamed up, it is mine.
Amazing. Would you pitch anything in the Old Republic?
I'd write anything in the Old Republic. I'm not kidding. I actually asked at one point when we still had really no idea what Master and Apprentice was going to be. I was like, can I have HK-47? Because I just felt the need to have Obi-Wan called a meatbag at some point. But they were like, you cannot have HK-47. No.
Too long. So, that's amazing. Actually, because this is Geek Bomb, I feel like it's mandatory. I have to ask you what you're currently, now that I know that you play, what are you currently playing, watching, and reading?
Let's see. We're watching The Umbrella Academy.
Season 2?
And a whole lot of, because there's only so much intensity I can deal with during quarantine stuff. We've been watching a lot of Death in Paradise, which is a British cozy mystery, except it's set on a British Virgin Island.
It's my dad's favorite show, and he introduced me to it. I know all about it now.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. It's just like, oh, let's see what happens. Like, I think at this point we've seen them all, and we're like, let's go watch that one again.
It's flirting with being a soap opera.
It kind of is, but it's just, the British are so really good at oh, this is such comfort viewing, this murder. Reassuring. Reading, I just finished Silver Sparrow. I can't remember the author's name. Is it Tahari Jones? I think that might be it, which was about the two daughters of a bigamous father. One of whom is aware of the other and the other of whom is not. And that was kind of a more serious book to dig into. I did, in the more sort of science fiction fantasy realm, I just finished Devolution, it's by Max Brooks, who did World War Z, and this is about a Bigfoot attack in the Northwest after a volcanic eruption. And at first I was kind of unsure about it, but it grew on me as it went. I had a lot of fun with that. I can easily see the eventual Netflix movie of that.
Cool.
And the last one was playing. Are you playing any apps, or do you play video games at all?
Video games.
This is embarrassing. This is really embarrassing.
I
play a phone game where you make pies. You get points if you make a good pie. And literally that, and you get tips, and you can use that to buy clothing and posters for the different holidays where there are the different themed pies. And I'm like, this is exactly as much stress as I can handle right now, is fake pie. Very good at making fake pies, by the way. And
working on
So that is completely humiliating, but it is the truth.
Hey, I'm the same. I just like to mind numb, it's comforting. It's nice. I'm playing Witcher 3 again, which is, easily 100 hours, but I just know that it's a hug for me, even though it's a lot of gore and death.
We'll probably do for another Knights of the Old Republic playthrough sometime soon. But
it's such a good game. I've done 2 playthroughs. I could absolutely do a third.
I really believe it's one of the great Star Wars stories. I really do.
So cool.
And it's RPG, and it's, oh my gosh, it's so good. Revan as well. Bestela. Anyway, Claudia, thank you so much for joining us for this official Geek Bomb after show, where we talk about Nerdist book clubs, the book of the month, Bloodline. Really do appreciate that one. Guys, as you heard, Instagram or Tumblr, maybe sometimes, but there is a full list of all of Claudia's books, and trust me, Lost Stars, if you haven't, and there's a bunch more. Hector, you've already bought them. You are ready to go as well. Really do appreciate that. I'm so glad that I was able to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been fun.
Thanks so much.